Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. Early in the morning of Tuesday, March 14th, two Russian Su-27 jets harassed a $32 million American MQ-9 Reaper surveillance drone that was gathering information on the nearby Ukraine war from the air above the international waters of the Black Sea, 75 miles from Russian-held Crimea. The two Russian jets reportedly toyed with the drone for up to 40 minutes, dumped jet fuel on it, then broke its propeller. On the ground, far away, the pilots of the American drone, it is said, decided to ditch the aircraft in the waters of the Black Sea, waters that are sometimes over a mile deep and would make it hard for the Russians to raise the drone and retro-engineer its technology, something the Russians are now trying to do. But before the American pilots deep sixed the drone, they are said to have downloaded the Reaper's data and programs, then to have wiped the Reaper's computer. They even downloaded a video of the Su-27 confrontation taken by the Reaper itself, a video they released to the press Thursday, March 16th. Meanwhile, the big worry was that this incident would trigger a nuclear war between America and Russia. But fortunately, neither side wanted that. Instead, they resorted to registering their complaints with diplomacy. However, there is a deeper story beneath this encounter. Wednesday, March 14th, the Trilateral Commission, meeting in New Delhi, India, declared that 2023 is year one of a new global order. Why? We are balanced on the knife edge of a total rearrangement of global power. But to understand the deep game at work here, you have to understand a principle from evolutionary biology, the dominance hierarchy. In 1905, when he was 6 years old, a Norwegian named Thorleif Schjelderup Ebb began to tend the chickens in the barnyard of his wealthy parents' summer home. And those chickens became a lifelong obsession. At the age of 10, when Ebb started a notebook on the clucking birds, his figures and diagrams documented something odd. All the chickens looked equal most of the time. But when feeding time came, that changed. The flock allowed just one chicken to be the first at the feeding trough. After chicken number 1 came chicken number 2, then chicken number 3, and so on down to the last bird in the flock, who was the last to eat. Then Ebb noticed something else when it came to violence. Chicken number 1 was free to peck any other chicken in the group, but none were allowed to peck her back. Chicken number 2 was allowed to peck every chicken in the flock with one exception. She couldn't peck chicken number 1. Chicken number 3 was allowed to peck any chicken in the flock with the exception of, you guessed it, chicken number 1 and chicken number 2, and so on down to the bottom chicken, who could be pecked by every other chicken in the flock, but was not allowed to peck anyone back. When he was 19, Schjelderup Ebb gave a meticulous rendering of the poultry social system he'd been observing for 13 years when he wrote his graduate thesis, a thesis that would be turned down by the University of Oslo, but that would become basic, a classic in the evolutionary sciences for the next 100 years. Ebb gave the chicken phenomena two names: a dominance hierarchy and a pecking order. And he called the top chicken a despot. In my book, The Lucifer Principle, a scientific expedition into the forces of history, I show you how dominance hierarchies also work between tribes, clans, subcultures, and most important, between nations and civilizations. Right now, America is on top of the international pecking order. But China wants to take over the #1 slot. What does the downing of a drone by a Russian fighter have to do with China? Everything. China and Russia are joined at the hip in an alliance no one talks about, but everyone should. The axis of evil: China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, Syria, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba. A win for Russia is a win for the axis of evil. And a win for the axis of evil is a win for China. But there's more. When a nation rises in economic power, it fights to reshuffle the pecking order of nations to reflect its new strength. That's the basic force behind world wars. And it's what's happening right now with China. Since 1980, China has risen to the second biggest economy in the world. And it's convinced that the Western order, led by America, is over and out, that the USA is old, tired, and decrepit. China wants to become what the United States is now: the top chicken, the despot, the ruler of a new world order. On Friday, March 10th, China did something shocking. It showed its strength by making peace between two nations that have been at war for 40 years, Iran and Saudi Arabia. This was more than China merely shoving America aside and taking the top slot. It was also the axis of evil flexing its muscles. And when Russia downs a $32 million US drone, that too is the axis of evil showing its strength. And it's something more. It's also Russia draining the Western alliance, the free world, of tanks, guns, and ammunition, draining America so China can wait for our weakness to grow and can execute its supreme mission: swallowing Taiwan and becoming the #1 chicken in the barnyard, the new despot, the new #1 civilization in a new world order. This is Howard Bloom speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make. Or, want to know why? Ask how.